Remember the gun-toting lawyer couple, Mark McCloskey and his wife in St. Louis during Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd protests, who were convicted of misdemeanor gun charges for menacing people with their weapons? You know what he's been doing since he had his criminal record expunged by the Missouri courts? He's been representing Jan's 6th insurrectionists, hundreds of them, bringing claims against the federal government under the Federal Tort Claims Act, just begging the government to settle with him. And the question today is he the brainchild for Donald Trump's decision to create a $1.7 billion victims compensation fund in a return for him dropping a fake suit against his Internal Revenue Service? And if it's against the Internal Revenue Service that he has his phony claims, why is Donald Trump draining the Department of Justice's victim compensation fund to pay Jan Sixers? Oh, let's update the story. It all started with Donald Trump suing under his own Federal Tort Claim Act case the Internal Revenue Service for $10 billion. That case landed in the lap of Judge Williams in federal court in Miami. And Donald Trump, afraid of what she's about to do in the next 5 days in terms of deciding if the case is legitimate or not, whether she has jurisdiction over it or not, he's about to settle it. But that's where Mark McCloskey may come in. I mean, the last time I thought about him, he was holding some sort of machine gun or weapon in a menacing way to try to get protesters to pass by his house, and was convicted for it. But then it turned out he's made a cottage industry out of representing Jan Sixers. And could be his idea for the victim compensation fund, which makes it even the more depraved and immoral. I'm Michael Popok with an update about the IRS shell game that Donald Trump is perpetrating on the American people to divert and effectively money launder $1.7 billion that doesn't belong to him. Doesn't really belong to the Department of Justice or the Internal Revenue Service. It belongs to you and me. It belongs to Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer. And Trump's going to set up a commission that only he controls, that's going to give out funds to Mark McCloskey's clients. Let's get to the bottom of it here on MeidasTouch and Legal AF. All right, well, way back during Black Lives Matter and in 2020, leading into 2021, McCloskey and his wife, who are lawyers, were famously prosecuted by the St. Louis County Prosecutor's Office, and he pled guilty to a misdemeanor. He had his law license taken away. Eventually, it was restored, and he got the governor to pardon him in 2024. Pardons are all the rage for the election-denying crowd, the racist crowd, right? Got new reporting that Tina Peters is being sprung from a Colorado prison by the Colorado governor on the way out, who's going to give her a pardon because he thinks the 7 years she got for interfering with the election as a clerk was too much. Okay? Be that as it may, we're back to McCloskey. He then restarts his career, decides he's going to represent other election deniers, including the weapon-toting ones that tried to burn down the Capitol, hang Nancy Pelosi, and other members of Congress. So he files under the Federal Tort Claims Act, which is how you sue the government, giving the government 180 days to respond. And then if you don't like that response, you go and file your lawsuit. I've got a number of Federal Tort Claim Act cases that I'm representing on behalf of Meidas Mighty and Legal AFers with the Popok firm, for example. And in particular, I want to go through what this victim compensation fund would look like. I first thought it was going to come from the Internal Revenue Service, like holding back money they should be giving over to the Treasury, but keeping it in their pocket and turning it over to Donald Trump. Now it looks like Trump, based on new reporting, is going to take it from the Department of Justice under real victim compensation funding. That doesn't belong to Congress. And there's not that much in there. He's going to have to get more, and Congress would have to be the one to allocate it. Now, Trump created a phony lawsuit that Judge Williams in Miami was questioning whether this is a real lawsuit at all. Because look what Donald Trump controls in this discussion. He controls from his being the head of the executive branch, the Treasury Department and its Internal Revenue Service, completely dominates and controls them. He controls his own Department of Justice. This is a shell game. He's going to have a suit against a phony suit that's not adversarial, in cahoots and collusion with his own Internal Revenue Service. And then to settle that, he's going to force a third entity that he controls, the Department of Justice, to pay the bill using all our taxpayer dollars. Does this sound fraudulent to you? Does it sound like a violation of the Constitution? Well, it should. There's going to be lawsuits over it to stop the Department of Justice, stop the Internal Revenue Service, stop the Trump administration from violating Article 1 of the Constitution, Article 2 of the Constitution, create a slush fund for a president to benefit his allies and cronies. Time for a confession, right? I've tried a lot of skincare products over the years, and most of them either overcomplicate things or just don't really do much. What I like about OneSkin is that it's actually rooted in real science. The company was founded by a team of female PhD scientists, and their whole focus is skin longevity, not just covering things up temporarily. I've been using their products consistently, and I genuinely like how simple the routine is. My skin feels healthier, smoother, and less irritated, especially compared to a lot of products that are loaded with harsh ingredients. At the core of their products is the OS1 peptide, which is designed to target the visible signs of aging at the source. Plus, everything is dermatologist tested and safe for sensitive skin. Born from over a decade of longevity research, OneSkin's OS1 peptide is proven to target the visible signs of aging, helping you unlock your healthiest skin now and as you age. For a limited time, try OneSkin with 15% off using code LegalAF at oneskin.co/legalaf. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with code LegalAF. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. The fact that Mark McCloskey, the gun-toting lawyer, racist lawyer who was trying to make sure that black people marching and others in support of Black Lives Matter passed by his house, he stood there with that weapon, we'll put up that picture, is the one that's maybe behind it all. Tells you everything you need to know about the lack of moral character of the President of the United States. I shouldn't have to do a report about an election denier, Jan 6 lawyer, coming up with the idea for a victim compensation slush fund controlled by the president. And let's remind everyone, including Donald Trump, that Congress creates executive agencies. Congress funds executive agencies. The executive branch can't create its own agency, can't create its own victim compensation fund. That's a breach of the separation of powers, Article 1, and the rest. And that's going to be the subject of the lawsuits. At the same time, we're waiting and will be waiting on the inevitable filing of a voluntary dismissal to have the case closed. But I don't think the federal judges like Judge Williams, who I know down in Miami, is going to be happy to be made to feel like she was a pawn, that she was used, the federal court system was used as cover for this conspiracy between the DOJ Trump owns, the IRS Trump owns, the victim compensation fund that he will control. I don't think she wants to be a pawn in that, wearing a black robe as a lifetime appointed federal judge. What can she do about it? Let's talk about that. Well, you got lawyers who filed the pleadings, and they can be sanctioned through the judge's inherent authority. That's one. The parties, IRS and the Trump administration, can be called on the carpet during an evidentiary hearing to determine whether they misled the court, whether they concocted in bad faith a collusive lawsuit in order to cover up for the funding. Now, she has already brought into the case 3 independent legal experts to advise her. They filed their brief already. Former Judge John Gleeson, federal judge, who's often an amicus curiae brief writer for judges to guide them, right? Don Verrilli, former Solicitor General of the United States, has argued dozens and dozens of cases successfully before the Supreme Court. right? And Faith Gay, who has a firm in New York I know well called Slendy Gay, and she's a top-flight litigator, well-respected. They wrote a brief and guided her about whether Trump can even maintain this lawsuit at all, with the executive branch director suing his own entities. And I think the judge should go back to them and say, was I just used? Was the federal court just used in bad faith by the executive branch in order to cover up for a settlement on a phony lawsuit with no consideration? And if so, what should I do about it? I think that's the next homework assignment, don't you? For the three, what we call the amici, who joined together in that brief that just came out. Now, Trump obviously saw it along with his lawyers and panicked and said, oh, crap, based on the guidelines and blueprint provided by those three, the judge is likely to throw the book at us and find that there's no case. We better settle the case before she declares there is no case. And it got worse once I found the link through HuffPo of Mark McCloskey's involvement. And we want to platform it, call it out here on MeidasTouch and on Legal AF. Thanks for being here. I'm Michael Popok. Come over to Legal AF YouTube channel. You may think that you're a subscriber, but I assure you, you probably aren't, even though you'd like to be. 40 million views a month. We got 1 million subscribers. We are appreciative of all of them, but there's a big gap that could be filled right now by you over on Legal AF. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.